Please welcome our superhero sponsor, New View Strategies, and their super team, Mark Rhodes, CSO, and Kerry Peters, CEO. Today, these BC superheroes will be saving the day with their session, How Much of Your BC System Are You Wasting? Stick around after this duo's session for a live Q&A with these real BC superheroes.
Hello, everyone. Hey, so thrilled that you are joining us today to talk about a subject that is near and dear to our hearts. I bet it is for you as well. I'm Mark Rhodes. We're going to talk today about how much of your BC system are you wasting. Love the energy, love the opportunity to interact with so many great folks out in the community through DynamicsCon 2021. I think this is the first of two events this year. And really appreciate the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you. So, as mentioned, my name is Mark Rhodes, and many of you probably know me from my involvement with the user groups and with NAVUG and BCUG for a while. I've been with New View Strategies now a year and a half. Time does fly when you're having fun, as the saying goes. And Kerry is really going to open us up to that specific question and take a look at functionality inside Business Central today. Hi, Kerry.
Hey, Mark. I'm so glad to be here. This is so exciting. I just love DynamicsCon, and I'm so happy to be sponsoring this year and able to share some information from our team later on in the sessions, but also through the session that we're about to present.
We are a sponsor this year. You probably figured that out already, but we do have a booth. We'll give you a ton of resources at the end to follow up on, and more importantly, a great scorecard for you to go ahead and figure out on your own how much of your BC system are you wasting. So we're going to really give you some tools and resources to help you unpack that specific question. But you got to hang on to the end. We'll get there and show you a little bit about that. But before we dive in, I want to tell you how fortunate I am to be talking with Kerry today and having her input on this, because if you don't know, she's one of the worldwide experts in terms of really unpacking Business Central and NAV in terms of really driving your business forward. And so from a business process improvement standpoint, coupling that with the system and really making it all click together, fantastic, just incredible depth of knowledge. She has a great podcast series around this particular focus. There's a link at the end of the presentation for that as well. But before we get too far off that topic, hey, I want to go ahead and come back to the question, how much of your BC system are you wasting? Now, we had to come up with a fairly clean title, but this applies to really any system that you're using. Certainly near and dear to our hearts is Business Central and NAV. So pop into the chat which version you're using. While you're doing that, as I was thinking about how we wanted to approach this topic and share with you today, I really started thinking about this. Here it is. Panic, I almost misplaced it. My cell phone, right? If you're old enough to remember when this used to be just a phone, and if you don't, believe it or not, this used to be just a phone. And then we had this incredible thing called texting coming out. And if you wanted a capital J, you would have to hit the 5 key 4 times to get to the capital J, right? Because we didn't have just the on-screen keyboard, right? And you think about how far that's progressed from not too long ago to this. I wonder if there's anybody out there that really understands everything you can do with this, right? The technology that comes involved or comes with it, and then all the apps you can download. I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? And if we struggle that much to really take advantage of what the cell phone now brings us, how about our Business Central and NAV version? It's a really difficult question to answer, right? Because how do you know what you don't know? There's so much embedded in the system, and Microsoft's been doing so much with it. Now, beyond that, we firmly believe at this point, we like to talk about BC and NAV as a strategic enabler. And I got to say, it's powerful stuff, right? Back to the question about how do you uncover and figure out how much is in there. Well, I wanted to find some studies that say 60% of the system isn't used on average or something along those lines. And it's really difficult to do that. There are really no studies out there that I could find that talk about how much is not used. Now, we all know implementations fail. We all know why. Not enough money and it goes towards training and testing. We all know as adult workers, as adult learners, we forget things over time. There's brain drain, everything else. So it's not really a surprise that, right, there is a lot of the system that's not being used. It'd be really, really nice to quantify it. I thought about the cell phone. The other thing I thought about was Excel. Kerry, do you know how many functions, not just all the stuff that Excel does, but those formulas in Excel? Do you know how many of those there are?
I really have no idea. And I've been keeping myself from cheating and looking it up since we talked about this and staying with my original guess, which was about 400. So that's just
not far off, but I was kind of surprised when I saw this. No, it's about 450. So
I'm surprised that I'm that close. But what's interesting is I was kind of pondering that number and trying to think of how many functions I know. I've used Excel for probably 20 years. I consider myself an advanced user, and I don't know if I would know more than 100 tops.
Right.
If I had to sit down and make a list, I don't know if I'd go beyond that. So that's a ton. I'm surprised by that number.
And so I hope that that's a tangible thing that you can grasp around, even with those simple applications, Excel, right? How much, there's a lot that you don't know in Excel. So again, coming back to BC and NAV, I understand a lot of management, they're looking at ROI, that before they invest more money, what are we going to get for it? And I'd absolutely say you're going to get a ton for it. Even though it's hard to quantify up front, we do have a way of getting to this. Before we go to that, I mentioned this concept that we're transforming into believing that BC and NAV is a strategic asset, a strategic enabler. It's beyond just certainly efficiencies and lack of errors and getting the orders out a little bit quicker and those types of things. But what kind of services can you drive? What kind of new capabilities? How can you differentiate yourself as a business? Satya Nadella has a great quote around this. He really talks about, we're almost beyond that at this point, just looking at how it can speed up or improve existing things. Technology is so embedded nowadays. You have to look at it through a very different lens as a business to go forward. And I want to highlight two quick points about his quote here. Every function in every department. He's not saying this is just around accounting and finance or just around, shipping and receiving, right? It's everything. And it's no longer discrete. And so you can't think of it in silos anymore. It's just embedded throughout the business and beyond the four walls of your business as well. So now I realize, guess what? That's a little bit out there. And when we already don't know what we're not using in the system, how can we think of it at that level? And sure, let's be real for a second. Every day it seems we hear, I didn't know BC and NAV could do that. So we've got to fix these things first, and we're going to help you do that. We all know there's manual workarounds. People get frustrated. There's real on the ground opportunity for improvement here. Kerry, you hear this all the time from our clients, right?
I absolutely do. In fact, your first bullet point up there really made me think of a moment that we have in our controller boot camps. So we get people together a couple times a year, either in person or virtually now, and help them to understand more capabilities of the system. And these are usually experienced users. And every day at the end of the session, we have a takeaway where we go through the room and we ask people what it is that they took away from the class that day. And there's one day in particular that is incredibly impactful. It's one of the days that we talk about accounts payable and accounts payable functions. And I would guarantee you that more than 50% of the room gets super excited about recurring purchase lines. And it's a great feature. It should be throughout the system. People should be using it a lot, but they don't know about it. And they don't know that it can almost completely eliminate their data entry for that process. So for that reason, it's hugely impactful. And we often have people say, we just paid for the whole week with that one piece of information, but one tiny little piece of functionality that they get so excited about.
Imagine how much more there is. And so, hey, that brings us to kind of the underlying question of all of this. How do you know what you don't know? Classic question. And again, we can help you with that. Kerry knows specifically how to answer that question. So Kerry, take us through, give us some things to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about what it is that we don't know, how many times have you not asked the right question and got surprised by something that was not a great surprise to have? It was painful. So when we think about exactly what it is we're trying to address here, it's the things that are causing us some problems. And really, even though you may be utilizing your system today, there's probably a big list of other things that you really need and want to get. And as we think about what that list is, we've got a couple of challenges, right? One of the challenges is just knowing what those projects should be, right? Do we have enough knowledge of the system to know exactly what those projects should be? And then maybe even how should we tackle them? Which things are going to have the best return on investment for us? Which things can we accomplish where we have the right experts available in our organizations to be able to do that? And of the people who do those tasks, how many of them have the capacity to be able to do it, the time to do that? So I think that as I think about this part of your businesses, I often think about a question that we get very frequently from our customers and from people who are looking to work with us is people will ask, Kerry, how in the world do other companies do this? And that's a real big question. We always want to know how other companies are doing a particular task. Are they doing it better? Are they finding ways to do it cheaper? Can they accomplish it faster? And that's one of the things that I get real excited about when I think about our team at NewView Strategies is that every single one of the experts that you would be able to work with are end users who've used this product before, and all of us have over 15 years of experience each. So I think that with our emphasis on training and continuous business process improvement, we can absolutely help you to get the answers that you need. And I brought with me a couple of examples today so that you can see from a couple of different areas how you might progress from where you are today to where you can feel that the system is optimized and where you're really using more of the features, and especially advanced features. There's absolutely no reason why you should be stopped at that maybe 10% mark or 20% mark of the features that are available. There's so much more to do there. And I wanted to put together a couple of illustrations of what that could look like. So you can imagine along with me how that would look. Now I'm going to go over two different areas. We're going to talk about accounts payable, and we're also going to talk about warehousing. And really these kind of progressions can be incorporated as you think about almost any area of your business.
Kerry, before we take a look at the accounts payable one, I want everybody just to take a deep breath, relax for a second, because we're going to show them this slide, and they're going to get a little panicky, right?
Yeah.
How before you jump to the "Am I doing all of these things?" kind of assessment, how many companies out there do you really think are at that optimizing level that we're going to look at in a second?
It's very few, unfortunately. So I would say that, and I'll preview it before you show it. We've got 5 phases. I would say that maybe the majority of companies that we run into are still sitting at stage 2.
Wow. Okay. All right. So everybody doesn't have to panic when they see this, but yeah, that's
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And for everybody watching, I try to throw Kerry a curveball at some point during the presentation, just so we have some fun. That was it, Kerry. So thanks.
All right. I know there's another one coming though, Mark.
There we go.
So,
walk us through this.
Fantastic. Everybody take just a minute and absorb this. Take a look at the 5 stages. And specifically, as you think about the stages that you see here, and we'll explain each of them one by one, but think about where you are with your company. And if you'd like, I'd love to see where you think you are in the chat. So, and you can put the name discovering, adapting, progressing, transforming, or optimizing in the chat. But just take a moment to reflect on where you think your company is at. Now, you may not be familiar with your accounts payable. You've got a chance to look at your warehousing in a little bit after we take a peek at that. But I'll give you many more examples than what we have on the screen here as well, so that you can understand exactly what's included in that particular phase. So let's start about talking with the discovering phase. So I've put one symptom really here of where I see that people are at the discovering phase, and that is the receipt of electronic invoices. Now, that seems like a simple thing, but at that first level, there can be many other things happening. Even though they might be receiving those invoices electronically, you could still be printing them. So this is a symptom that I see very frequently. And this is something I ask about when I come in to do an assessment is when you receive an electronic, an email, right, an invoice and email, what do you do with it next? And the answer is very telling, because if the answer is we print it, then I can make some assumptions about what's happening with it. If the answer is we detach the attachment and we attach it back into our ERP, that means that we're probably at that phase 2 for adapting. But let's stay with stage 1 for just a second. If you are seeing people print invoices at your company, that probably means that there's a lot of approvals going on. So if we think about what's happening with that piece of paper, why is that being printed out? It's probably being printed out because somebody's needing to walk it down the hallway to somebody so that they can review it and sign it and maybe tell them where to code it. Now, what happens after that? Once that approval is received, then it's going to go back into the AP department for processing. But does that happen flawlessly? Hardly ever. This is where companies see a lot of delays, where it might sit on somebody's desk for a while. It might take a little while to get back to the accounts payable department. And more importantly, that piece of paper has entered the building, but the data has not entered the computer system. So we have no idea that there's an AP liability that we are obligated to because it's sitting on a piece of paper outside of the system. So once it gets back into accounts payable, we probably have an AP tickler file, right? If, for those of you who don't know what an AP tickler file is, that means that that invoice is sitting in there until it's due. And at the time that it's due, when we do the payment run for the week, and we're probably doing paper checks for this, we're going to pull that invoice out of the tickler file. We're going to match it with the check stub. And then what happens? All that stuff has to be filed in a filing cabinet. Now, if you think about this, I would say that the majority of companies were at this phase 10 to 15 years ago. So that most companies were doing this because they didn't have the technology to progress to the other phases. So the technology that we have received with different packages that we have available, like Business Central and NAV, have allowed many of these other phases to exist. And the thing that's most significant to me with this particular phase is that people have to be at the office in order to do this. They cannot do their work because they don't have access to the tickler file, and they don't have access to the check printer, and they certainly don't have all those filing cabinets where they can find anything. And finding information out is very difficult because you have to actually go find paper in a filing cabinet to get those answers instead of looking at it in your computer, like we're all used to in many other areas.
Kerry, I'm thinking back to last spring and all the panic calls we got right around that very point, right? All of a sudden, we're the complete process breakdown because they weren't using it, embedding it in the system. Right. Yeah. And in fact, we worked with a couple of customers where we said, well, the new flow, if you have people working remotely, is going to look like this. And it actually took them up to a week longer to process things because they had to be remote because of what they had to do with the transport of paper between one approver to another or the person who signed the checks, all that. So yeah, this is really something that is going to hold you back from growth. So let's talk about how we get beyond that though. And in this next step, we're not going to do anything other than just change our process. So we're going to do the processes differently. We are going to, at this stage,
start to store the invoices electronically. Pretty simple, especially if we think about the first thing we talked about with the discovering phase, that if we receive an email, we print it, right? The new value that we instill in our company is if it's received electronically, it stays electronic. So anything that we receive in an email gets attached and put somewhere else, and it never printed. So that means that there's a significant change that happens in the AP process. Nobody is maintaining a tickler file. We're letting the system do that for us. If that information is already in the system, that is automatically allowing us to view the electronic copy of the invoice and to see the monetary liability that we have for what we're going to owe. We don't have to file things in a filing cabinet anymore because we have those documents in our system, and we can simply look at a posted invoice in the system and bring up the copy of that invoice. Now, this also gives us an opportunity to change those approval processes, and we can use any number of different things to have that approved because it's in electronic format. And certainly all of this makes remote work much more possible, and that's critically important. So the other thing that we may see, though, is that this still doesn't move us beyond all of the paper that's involved in the accounts payable process. What we've done is we've eliminated the invoicing as part of the paper process. Now, people are still going to manually enter the information from that electronic copy. Hopefully, we've all graduated to having more than one screen. This is important. If you've got people in your accounts payable department who only have one screen, if you want them to move to electronic document management, they've got to have two screens because they have to see it on one screen and enter it on another. It'll be a huge efficiency gainer. And some of you may think it's silly that I'm bringing that up, but I have gone into at least 3 companies in the last year who still had single screens on their desks. So it's something I urge you to do for electronic paper processing. Certainly, a lot of companies at this stage, though, are still using paper checks. So they've got fully electronic document management, but they're using paper checks to complete the payment process. And that means that they've still got to have check printers, paper stock, check stock. They may have any Micker ink. They have to have envelopes, postage meter, all that kind of stuff. So this still hasn't completely solved the issue of remote work. And I did see quite a few of our customers in the last year kind of stuck here too. They were doing better. They didn't have a whole lot of holdups with having to have somebody sort the mail and deliver invoices to somebody like the people in the discovering phase. But they still had to have somebody who was going in to print the checks because that's where the check printer was. And somebody probably still needed to sign those checks if they didn't have it designed where they could electronically sign those checks. So you can see that there's still a lot of work to be done in that phase. So still a lot of automation that is possible, but it's a big step to move the company from paper received and filed in filing cabinets to electronic invoices and emails received that are attached in your system. That's a big step. But here's the biggest one of all, and this is why this one is highlighted in red on our transformation scale there. The leap to 3 is huge. And the exciting thing is that, again, just like we did with moving from 1 to 2, from discovering to adapting, in moving from adapting to progressing, we are able to still just change our processes. We can absolutely depend on our system to have all these features available. We just have to change our mindset and our processes on how we're going to accomplish things. So this is the biggest leap because this is involving some people outside of our company as well, our vendors. So with the progressing step for accounts payable, we want to talk about paying invoices electronically. So we want to move from paper checks being sent in the mail to electronic payments being sent out in the ether. So we've already eliminated all the paper going up to the check run. At this point now, we're going to say we're going to eliminate paper checks. So there's some communication that will have to happen with vendors. And I will tell you, we hardly ever run into vendors who are resistant to this anymore. So most vendors want to receive payments electronically. That used to be the objection, I'd say maybe 10 years ago, where they weren't equipped to do that. The majority of companies are equipped to do that now and are enthusiastic about receiving their money electronically because there are many fewer problems with that. We'll definitely have to make some changes as far as approvals. Approvals are going to have to be moved up front into the purchasing cycle. We can no longer depend on an approval happening at the time of the payment run. So nobody's going to get that matched voucher packet, right, with the invoice and the check stub where they need to sign the check in a separate stack. That can't exist anymore. So we're going to have people approve purchase orders before they go out, which is actually much better, right? Why wouldn't you want to have somebody approve something before you spend the money instead of after the fact? So that actually is quite logical, and most companies really like being able to make that change. Here's the other thing that is special about this particular step with progressing. We can make significant changes to the payment run. So some companies will have a weekly check run or maybe twice a week, and there's a good amount of time involved to gather that information, get it approved, that kind of thing. And since we're issuing checks, we're going to have check float. So our cash is delayed as far as tracking it, that kind of thing. If we change to electronic payments, we can very easily change to a daily payment run. And this is huge because number one, it's more efficient. And number two, it allows your company to hang on to your cash much longer, right? You don't have to think about, okay, I have this money committed and it's floating out there in a check and nobody's cashed it yet. When it's sent electronically, it's sent, and you know exactly how much cash you have. And if you're a company who takes discounts, think about how much more accurate your discounts could be if you could always send it on the day that it's due or on the day of your discount terms. So you're going to be able to take discounts without having to reserve that so far ahead. So the cash impact on this is incredibly impactful because you can monitor what's happening with that daily cash. Here's the last thing about this. This really helps with fraud protection. Your bank is going to love you if you move forward with this phase with your accounts payable. You no longer need positive pay, where we have to go through the process of informing the bank of what checks we send so that they can make sure that checks aren't stolen or washed, or we don't have to worry about people stealing check stock anymore. So from a fraud protection standpoint, this is much, much better. So you can see huge leaps there with moving from 1 to 2 to 3. So let's talk about our next level then, sending automatic remittances. This is a little bit smaller a step. We took a big leap with progressing, so we'll take a breath and take a smaller step. But this is still important because if we're sending an automatic remittance to our vendor along with the electronic payment, it means we're taking advantage of more automation for efficiency in the system. So this is eliminating the need for our accounts payable person to do manual research, to communicate maybe through an email or a spreadsheet exactly what was paid to the vendor. We're letting the system gather that information and send it for us automatically. And this is really going to help with communication.
Kerry?
Yeah.
If I'm tracking this right, we haven't added any new functionality. This is all stuff that exists in BC Nav already, and every customer using it has already, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you were a company who is putting Business Central into place today, you would have all of this capability there out of the box immediately. And the only thing that's holding you back is maybe your knowledge that it exists, or your knowledge of how to use it, or your ability to move your company through the change necessary in their processes to make that happen. So this is all 100% business process improvement. It has nothing to do with having to apply extensions or make customizations. This is all stuff that people can implement at any time that they're ready. And we just find that a lot of people can use some help with understanding what the capabilities are, how to use them, and how to pull the trigger to put that into place. All right, so I'm going to talk about the last one because this is a great technology. And for this, you might need a little something extra. So there's some choices there. The last step is using optical character recognition. Now, if you think about what that is. Optical character recognition is the capability to be able to have the system scan your electronic invoice and enter the data into your system for the invoice. So all of the steps prior to this, if you think about the 4 steps prior to this, somebody is still manually entering the information. So they have to enter information about the vendor in the header, maybe some dates, maybe an invoice number, and then quite a bit of detail on the lines. And all of that takes time. Optical character recognition replaces that. And a lot of companies will realize a reduction of data entry of 50 to 75% for their accounts payable people, because that's primarily their job, is the routing of those invoices and entry into the system, and of course the accomplishing of the payment run. But if they could reduce more than half of their time where they don't have to do data entry, that means that your AP person turns into a reviewer instead of a data entry clerk. That person can really be doing more analysis to make sure that, are the payments made correctly? Are they made on time? Are we taking discounts? What are the trends that we're seeing with the vendors? So they can spend much more time on that instead of all of that data entry. So it certainly allows us to be able to still review before we post, and we may need to make a few adjustments there with things that we find, but it really reduces the manual nature of accounts payable almost more than any of the other things combined. So if I had a company who was doing all of these things, then I would say that they're absolutely optimized. But until we reach that level where we're accomplishing that much automation behind the system, then there's a little bit more work to be done. All right, so we took a deep dive into accounts payable. Yeah, it is exciting stuff. Let's take a little bit of a tour with warehousing. So get ready for another chart here. So these are the different steps for warehousing. So again, take a pause and review what we have here. Where are you at with your company? I've put a few indicators here. We'll talk about many more of them like we did with accounts payable, but these are the probably primary symptoms that I see that tells me what phase you're at with your warehousing. So our first phase, if we are processing paper pick tickets, that means that we've got printers in the warehouse. We've probably got pencils in the warehouse. We have markers and highlighters. All of those things are things that we're finding out there in the warehouse because they're tools of dealing with paper. We know that if we've got paper pick tickets that are floating around the warehouse, that we have a higher risk for human error. But the thing that we don't think about a lot of time that is a really telling thing is that we have delays in posting to the system. So if we have an order that comes through and that order is out for picking, and it gets picked and it gets packed and it gets shipped, we might not update that into the system until maybe overnight. So we've got at least a day's delay in letting us know how much of that we have in the system. We definitely will have more inventory discrepancies, and we're likely not using barcodes of any type. So our next level, if we start using handhelds, we have to have barcodes. Those things come hand in hand. And once we have implemented handhelds and the use of barcodes, then we have faster processing, and we can certainly commit information into the system more real time at the time that it's picked. So our accuracy increases. We're certainly able to accomplish in more ways than order by order. We can start grouping those things together. If we move to progressing and we start to automate what happens with receiving, then we're taking the system's advice about where inventory is going to be stored. We can have more accurate and compact storage. Since the system is going to tell us where things are going to be, where we don't have to remember, we absolutely have the ability to manage larger and more complex spaces in more efficient and compact ways. So we can take advantages of some huge improvements there. Our next set, transforming, is if we're using bins. So we can start to take advantage of not only the efficiencies that we got with receiving in the progressing stage, but we can start to have the system direct our picking processes and our putaways for replenishment. So think about what else we can do with accuracy of inventory counts. And again, space management. If we don't have to worry that all the inventory for this one item is here, if the system can keep track of the 4 or 5 different bins that it's in so that we can have accurate inventory counts, that makes our cycle counting much easier. The last piece here for dynamic replenishment is certainly we can start to reduce the need for forward staging or decrease the use of overstock and let the system tell us when we need to replenish, right? This is where we see probably the largest gain in cash because we don't need to keep so much inventory to manage our lead times. So shorter turns are going to allow us to do a whole lot of different things and be a little bit more conservative with the money that we spend on one of our largest assets, inventory. Now, if you think about these stages, we did have to incorporate the use of handheld, so we have a little bit of outside stuff that has to come in with that hardware, but all of these other things, again, processes that exist in your system where you can take advantage of the system capabilities that you have simply by choosing to do things differently. So when I think about the steps in this process, I think about one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite people, and that is Dolly Parton. And I absolutely love what she has to say here. This is the foundation of how we built our company. And we always hear you saying, there's got to be a better way. We'd love to help you find that by doing more with what you already have. And talking through these kind of progressions is often the way that we can accomplish that. But there are a few other ways we can accomplish that, Mark. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I know everyone out there at this point is thinking, holy cow, we have so much opportunity with the systems that we already have. How can New View Strategies help us accomplish that and really get so much more return out of our existing investment in those systems? And I'd say I'm glad you asked, of course. So how do we do that? And I'll say, Kerry, really quick, we didn't have time to even talk about the change management implications of this. But in terms of how we approach helping businesses to climb this ladder and continue to unpack more features and functions and streamline their processes and improve their customer service and increase efficiencies, all those things, we take into deep account the change management. Kerry did touch on that, some of these steps are bigger than others, and there are proven ways to migrate through those steps, but you got to have that experience really to understand here are the real gotchas for each of these transition points. And really, here's what you're going to have to think about ahead of time and incorporate into the approach. So that's a whole other session, but let me answer everybody's question about how we can help. Look, if you really don't even know where to start, we can help you with that. We have a very short, usually it's about a week long, current state assessment. We will drop in, understand how you're using the system, take a look at your processes, take a look at your setup, identify very quickly where you are on the scale and what opportunities lay ahead of you, and more importantly, put a plan together to move up that scale. And so we'll step into it with you. And good news is we work with your existing partner as well in terms of the opportunities for improvement. We'll even identify the things that you should be doing yourself. So we can answer those questions pretty quickly. Once we kind of figure out and get that game plan together, or if you already know what you want to accomplish, but then how do you even get there and making sure that you do continue to make progress, that's our value-driven transformation. We'll map all that out, set up those milestones and hit those milestones for you to make sure that you continue improving. And we incorporate that change management approach as well. If you have a pretty good feel where you are, but you guys, your company, your team, they have a pretty specific need around a particular area, function, feature, et cetera, you know where it's hurting and you need help, we've got that covered too. We have 65 classes out on our website. You go through, you can put your own curriculum together to match your exact needs, and we'll deliver that for you and make sure the team is ready to go. So now, why are we so good at this? Well, honestly, we were built from the ground to do these types of projects. We are not a partner. We don't sell software, so we're not upgrading you. That's the partner that you work with already. We are focused on business process improvement and making sure that you continue to get more out of the system, especially after that initial go live. And so that's how we built the business, and that's who's on the team, and we all love doing that. All right. Hey, I promised some resources at the end, and I want to go ahead and show you. We have scorecards available out on the website. These are premieres as part of DynamicsCon, and we've been working on these. We will continue to add to these very quickly, really as soon as we can get them rolled out. But let me show you where they are very quickly. I'm going to pop over to our browser, and I'm right on the homepage here for New View Strategies. You can see up in the menu, there's a scorecard link. I'm going to click on that. It's going to take us to our system scorecard page eventually. Okay. And so far, we have the finance and accounting scorecard and the warehousing scorecard. You're probably not surprised since that's what we just talked through. And let me just show you very quickly how this works, but it's very intuitive. The beautiful thing is you can do your own self-assessment. We take you through different sections within each of these categories and ask you a bunch of questions about how you're using the system. Answer yes, no, tab through, keep answering. There's about 30 questions. Doesn't take very long, but it may be some eye openers for you. When you get done, you hit evaluate. You'll receive your score, your stage in the cycle, the transformation cycle. And there's also a contact form there. If you put your name and email in there, you'll get a copy of the scorecard with your results so that you can evaluate it with your team and have a good discussion about where you're headed. And of course, then you can contact us and we can help you through that as well. So I hope you can take advantage of those scorecards that we have out there. I promised a bunch of resources at the end, so let me make sure that you have those as well. If you want to talk more one-on-one, we've got a sponsor booth. Head over there. We've got all hands on deck to talk to you there as well. If you don't want to talk right now, you want to follow up, you can certainly see my email at the bottom there. But as far as those other resources, again, we've got a link to those scorecards out on the website. You can see the list, a bunch of how-to videos and other articles, how to get more out of your system, a link to our list of 65 classes. Just let us know. Be happy to help you however we can. And if we're not a good fit for you, that's okay too. Take advantage of the resources. And Kerry, I got to say, I just want to wrap up a little bit in case people have to go. I had a great time. I know you did because I could feel the excitement coming from you as well.
Absolutely. You know, I love to talk about those topics and a whole lot of other ones. So I'd love to talk to people more about that in the chat afterwards, as well as at the booth.
Fantastic. So again, thanks everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it gave you a lot to think about, and let's take some questions. Hello, DynamicsCon. How is everyone? What a fantastic volume of chat that's been happening here, except lasted. Now, I've got 9 to 5 stuck in my head as well. So thanks very much for that. Kerry, did you have a good time? This is some great chat going on.
Fantastic. I just love that we got everybody singing Dolly Parton in the chat. That just totally made my day. But you know, I could talk about all this stuff all day long and will, right? Yeah.
No, stick around for the rest of the conference, but hopefully you get that out of your head at some point. Hey, we have several questions to go through. I just wanted to point out to everyone as well, just reiterate a couple things that we mentioned there. One, you saw the resource slide with those links there. And Cynthia is posting in some messages into the chat here. If you want a copy of the slides, and certainly to get access to those links, she'll post in the chat how to get a copy of our slides, as well as if you're interested in going through the business transformation scorecard. Again, we have finance and accounting and the warehouse scorecards available. Just takes a few minutes, but honestly, we really hope it stokes a lot of conversation with your team about how much of the system you're using and not using, and really start talking strategically about how to use Business Central, your nav system, as a strategic enabler for your operations. So we've got the two available. We're still coming out with sales, purchasing, system admin, and manufacturing. So check back for those soon. But I hope those are great tools for you and great conversation starters. We also have our giveaway. Don't forget, stop by the booth or enter through the link that we're providing in the chat message to get some expert or time with experts, and you can talk about your individual situations. Kerry, are you ready for some questions?
Totally ready.
Fantastic. So there's a lot of specific ones, but I really want to start with one that's a little bit broader. We touched on change management in the presentation. There was a question about change management as well. You know, it's not a simple process, and we don't mean to intimate that it is to go from level 1 to level 5, but talk a little bit about your experience in terms of how do you move up that ladder and what are the change management implications? How do you address that with the company? Because you're talking some pretty big change.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge piece of being able to move your company from phase 1 to phase 5. If we're talking about, moving up that scale, you really have to take into consideration your company's pace of change that they can absorb. We talk about that all the time. When we sit down and put together a plan for a company, we want to know how much change your company can absorb over a certain amount of time. And that has a lot to do with the capacity that people have to be able to take on more as they're taking on these special projects. And it also has a lot to do with your culture. So as you think about the pace of change that your company can absorb, sometimes the answer might be not fast enough, right? Because otherwise we'd be there already. So then you have a different set of challenges to manage. And the three things that I'd like y'all to consider when we think about change management, especially in a difficult environment, is number one, what's happening with this project and executive support. I cannot speak highly enough about what tone from the top does to your project, either direction. So if we have positive executive support and this is a priority, this project is a priority in the company, this project will go well. There's no doubt about it. The other thing that I would always tell you with change management, especially if we're talking about difficult change management, is that we've got to be firm in our definition of what's done. So, and what I mean by that more precisely is don't give people a choice. If you decide that we're going from step 1 to step 5, that's the direction that we're taking, right? So you do have to be firm in your direction with a project like this. We are making these changes. This is why, this is how, let's go, right? And the why and the how are important. You have to get buy-in from people. They've got to be along for the ride. They have to understand how they're going to do their job with these changes in place. But then everybody's got to go. The last thing I'd say about change management then is you've got two choices. Do you want to take this one bite at a time? Or do you want to make this a big bang project? Again, that's going to go back to what I talked about at the very first part, right? What is the pace of change that your company can absorb? I've done plenty of these projects where we've done it either way, and both of them work. So you're going to have to decide which one is the best thing for you, and what are your other goals that you're supporting. If you're having cash management problems, if you're having fraud problems, if you're having some of those kind of things, you have more urgency. So you may want to move faster on this project. So you might need to put together all of the pieces and have a big bang project and just go with it. Otherwise, if you don't have that kind of urgency, you absolutely can take this one bite at a time. What if you break those 5 phases into 3 or 4 months apiece and you start going through that gradually? So there's no one answer to change management, right, Mark? You've got to understand your culture, understand the pace of change, and understand how you can get that going with your company to accomplish the other goals that you'll reach by finishing this one.
And that's why change management is always a complex topic, complex issue. But I got to tell you, think about this. The best time to make the change is not when it's absolutely required or an emergency, right? So don't get caught. Don't get caught. Hey, we've got another kind of broader question before we go into a specific question, just to really about making change happen. Sean Dewar asked, he's got the most intelligent questions, I think. For AP processing steps for your business transformation. Do you see the businesses who just can't move up to the next step?
Can't is an interesting word, Sean. So I have run into many companies who say that they can't move to the next step, right? We can't do that because, and you know what the number one can't is? The number one can't is we can't stop keeping our invoices in filing cabinets, right? How would we possibly do it another way? I have brought more companies from paper full processes to paperless processes using base nav and base business central, and without having to do all this extra stuff, right? It's truly just changing the process. So it depends on what the can't is. And even if you think about this, what if money is the issue, right? What if the company says, well, we just can't afford to do this? Think about how you prove ROI, right? There is huge return on investment with these kind of process improvements. And sometimes we've got to do the work for the customers to show them what the ROI is, right? So time studies. And let's not make a giant science project out of this. We can do this quick and dirty on a Post-it, and we can figure out how much time do people spend on this stuff, right? Time, supplies, delays, errors, fixing errors, right? And you can assign numbers to all those things, and then you can compare that against what is the time that we're going to invest in the project to get people all up to speed on what is the new process, make sure they're fully trained and comfortable, and make sure that we get through the transition. It becomes a really easy discussion, and you get past can't really fast with those kind of things.
Paul says, my gran used to say there's a can in can't. Grandmas are the best, aren't they?
I like that. That's fantastic. Thank you, Grandma.
Hey, Belinda noted too, Kerry, that you look good in red. Just started hearing that.
I saw that. Thank you, Belinda.
Yeah. So Wanda says, we're interested in Purchase Journal to import large quantities of invoices. That is, request a data file from your vendor. Do you recommend?
Absolutely. Yeah, purchase journals are something that we always include in our basic accounts payable training. So we talk about, how can we manually enter purchase invoices? How can we use three-way match with our purchase orders? But how can you deal with large, massive amounts of data? Purchase journals is often the answer. So make sure that you test what you set up, because you can make some mistakes in setting that up. But if you test it and look at your results and understand what those results are going to get you out of the system, then I think that you'll enjoy that very much. The one downfall for purchase journals is that you cannot replicate an invoice out of the system, right? Because it's truly recorded as a journal. You're getting them so you can record your accounting processes.
Yeah, excellent. Hey, Kimberly has had a couple questions, and Kimberly, if you wouldn't mind putting back in your chat, in the chat here, I think most of your questions have been answered, but if there's something outstanding and you'd like to get it to the top of the queue, put that back in the chat, please. Her last question is, when we were first implementing BC, we looked at electronic approvals for AP, but in the phone app, they were not detailed enough by invoice for us. Has that changed?
As far as the approvals, no, I don't believe that's changed at all. So the phone app, the mobile app, is very light with information. And if you're looking for deep information, you want to look at the actual invoice with all the lines and that kind of stuff, then you're going to have to use the desktop application. If you're using the mobile app just to view vendor amount, and maybe you're already somewhat informed, right, of that process, then you can move forward.
All right. Seeing some chat messages that our sound has disappeared. Boy, I hope that's not the case. Somebody's offering some quick lip reading lessons.
Oh, no.
And I'm looking for any questions amongst all this. Apparently we look happy, so that's good. Let's push forward. I also am not sure that this was fully answered, so I'm going to throw it out there. Wanda said, did you say there's an electronic approval routing for AP invoices in BC?
Yes, there is electronic routing approval in BC.
Yes. All right. We are definitely not transmitting our sound now, so that's disappointing. Hopefully it will get corrected very quickly. Let's see if we got a note from our director here. I don't see anything. All right. Speed is not back to normal. Sound should be back in just a moment. Yes. All right. Well, you try to project and be prepared for any situation. This isn't one I thought about, so wish we had something to show. Yeah, exactly. That's right, Sean.
David. Okay, I guess, Mark, all we'll be able to do is this, right?
Right.
That we love our group.
Okay. Okay. Well, certainly some nice comments coming in. Thank you for that. Did you see Paul's comment? Excellent. Excellent. Spot on. Kerry, any closing thoughts in case somebody can still hear us?
We absolutely love Business Central and everybody who uses it.
Yes. So if anybody can hear us, yes, we would love to continue the conversation over in the booth. We'll be there all afternoon, of course. If you'd like to suggest a meeting, we are signed up for the networking umbrella for that as well. So please do so. We'd love to chat with you. And I think that's about it. We probably have our contact information in here. I'm going to go ahead and put my email in here again as well, just in case. Certainly appreciate everybody joining us for this topic today. Obviously, we're very passionate about this, and I think we are about there. Let's see. I assume we're out of time. All right.
Oh, all right. So here we need to do speak no evil.
Right.
See no evil. Hear no evil.
All right. That's probably it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah.
Appreciate you pushing through. And good luck out there.